We're holding in the middle of the first paragraph of the mimer from Avdi David Melech Aleim, and we were asking a few questions. Benegay, why is Mashiach referred to as David? And we also said that Roya Echad Lekulam, that will be one shepherd for all of them, means that it will not be divided anymore to two kingdoms like it was, the kingdom of Yisrael and the kingdom of Yehuda. And that's why it also says the same idea in the Haftarah about the joining of the two pieces of wood. So now he's going to explain that this is the reason, because of that union that the Haftarah talks about, that the two kingdoms will not split anymore. That is the connection between the Haftarah and our parsha. So we're holding about halfway down the page. The line begins as Eitz Yehuda. It's 4 words from the end of the line. If you see where it says that number 8 at the end of the line, so it's 4 words before that. And he goes on to explain the Zeu Gam Echad Ma'biyurim, but Shaykh is the Haftarah Zu in Parshas Vayigash. This is also one of the explanations of the connection between this Haftarah with Parshas Vayigash. What's the association? What's the connection between the two? Parshas Vayigash Vayigash El of Yehuda. In Parshas Vayigash it says that Yehuda approached him. Hagashas Yehuda LeYosef, the approach of Yehuda to Yosef. Like in the Zohar, it's explained the idea behind it, like we had also in the previous Hamarim, that this idea that's explained in the Zohar means the idea of that Gal, Yisrael, and Shemoneh Esrei should not have any interruption between them. Similar to this in the Haftarah, it says, "V'nosati oisam all lovers Eitz Yehuda, I will place them upon him, or I will place upon them the piece of wood of Yehuda." In other words, not just will he write on one piece of wood Yosef and Ephraim, and on one piece of wood Yehuda, but then I will place one on top of each other. Chibur Yehuda im Yosef, the joining of Yehuda with Yosef. But here's an important distinction that the Rebbe makes between the way it's in our parsha and the way it's in the Haftarah. In this itself, there are two approaches, two ways, like it's explained over there in that mimer of the Frierdiker Rebbe. It's possible that Yosef should be the one on top. He should be over Yehuda. For example, in our parsha, in Parshas Vayigash, Yehuda nigash LeYosef. Yehuda approached Yosef. Yosef is higher than Yehuda, and we see it in actuality. He was when the Shvatim came down to Mitzrayim, was fulfilled the dream that Yosef had, that all of the sheaves will bow down to him and all the stars will bow down to him, because at that time Yosef was higher than all the brothers. And it wasn't just an arrogant height, but he also supplied them with all their needs. He gave them living quarters, he gave them food, etc., etc. So Yosef was the mashpia to all of them. So he was higher than them. That's the way it's in our parsha, Yosef being over and higher than Yehuda and also all the Shvat. But there's another approach, another manner, that Yehuda is higher than Yosef. The Yosef Yehuda, the loss of love the Va'avdi David Melech Aleim. That's why the union and the joining of Yosef Yehuda in Mashiach's times will be in such a way that my servant David will be a king upon him. Who's the servant going on? David. Shemelech Mashiach Yem Yehuda V'loy Yosef. Mashiach will come from Yehuda, not from Yosef. So the ascendancy will be Yehuda over Yosef, and like it also says over there in the Nevuah, they'll place the piece of wood of Yehuda upon the piece of wood that says Yosef and Ephraim, because that's the idea of Mashiach's times. Va'avdi David Melech Aleim v'roya echad l'kulam. Like we began right away, there will be one shepherd, and that shepherd will be from Shevet Yehuda, meaning that Yehuda will be higher than Yosef. So now we need to understand what is this idea b'chlal of the joining, but mainly, what is this change? Why is there sometimes, or at the beginning, there is Yosef higher than Yehuda, and at the end, there is the other way around. When Mashiach comes, it's Yehuda is higher than Yosef. Well, how is that to be able to understand this? Mevayet inyan Yosef Yehuda ba'avodas ha'adam. The Frierdiker Rebbe explains in his Maimer the idea of Yosef and Yehuda in a person's service to Hashem. Since the purpose and goal of everything is the service of a person, so therefore it's important. He explains the matter the way it's in the service of a person. And now the Rebbe adds another point. It's not just that the Frierdiker Rebbe explains it in how it is in Avodas Hashem, because the tachlis of everything is to serve Hashem, and therefore everything needs to reflect in our service of Hashem. But since the goal is for a person to serve Hashem, and everything is because of that, so that means the reason for those occurrences, the reason for the physical occurrence of Vayigashel of Yehuda, and the reason for what's going to happen when Mashiach comes, is because it's a result of the avoid of the person. Not that those events occurred, and now we have to figure out and take lessons in our avodah. Just the opposite. The entire purpose was our service, and because the purpose was our service, that's why it came down. From that comes down the chain descent, all the matters in Seder Ishtalshus, that to the degree that we had in our parsha, Vayikashel of Yehuda, and to the degree that when Mashiach comes, it's going to be the other way around, that Yehuda is going to be higher than Yosef. It's explained over there in the Maimer of Frierdiker Rebbe, the Yosef and Yehuda in Talmud and Ma'aser. Yosef and Yehuda is learning, Torah study, and action. Talmud is a Yosef, Torah study is Yosef. And now we're going to address a question that was asked a few mamorim back. Move him Masha Kosov, like it's understood from what it says. Ves Yehuda sholach lefanav lahayris lefanav goishla. It says Yehuda, he was sent before him lahayris lefanav. Why does it use the word lahayris? Lahayris means to show, but it also means to teach, from the word Torah. So what's it mean lahayris? So from this the Chazal derive, and also Rashi brings us down in Chumash. L'sakin loy beis Talmud. Lahayris from the word hayra, that he sent Yehuda before him. Yaakov sent Yehuda before him, so that when Yaakov would arrive in Mitzrayim, there would already be a yeshiva. But hold on, we're not talking about Yehuda. We're trying to speak about Yosef's connection with learning. So the Rebbe says, Shemokem HaTalmud Hu Begoishen Artze Shel Yosef. The place of the learning was in Goshen, which is the land of Yosef, the land that Yosef got for his family and so on. Af she'eis Yehuda sholach gomer, though it was actually the one that had to establish it, that was Yaakov sent Yehuda, but it's still under the control, under the rulership of Yosef. Therefore, it's considered Yosef's yeshiva, not Yehuda, and Yosef is therefore associated with Torah learning. Another reason why Yosef is associated with Torah learning, which we had in the previous moment. That's also the idea that says Yosef, from the word addition and increase. That's also the primary idea of Torah, to add to it. Our job is to increase in Torah study. In mitzvahs, there's no increase. There's only 4 parshas in Tefillin. There's only tzitzis on 4 corners of a beged. You can't increase. You can't make it grow. Torah learning, the whole idea of Torah learning is to increase. Though everything that a diligent student will eventually come up with a new insight, it was still Nitan L'Moshe Sinai, which is given to Moshe on Har Sinai. So one could question and say, hold on, it's not considered an increase because it's all there. So the Rebbe says, no, it's still considered Haisafa, it's still considered La Fashala. Still, in all, there has to be the novelty and the addition of the diligent student. So, true, it was given to Moshe, but the way it was given to Moshe was in a way that's concealed. There's a very famous story about Moshe saw all the generations, and he saw Rabbi Akiva darshaning, mounds and mounds of halachas based on the crowns of the letters of the Torah and so on. So, hold on, didn't Moshe receive the entire Torah? But what it means is he received it in potential, and the actualization and the chiddush of it is actually associated with the Talmud. That's why it's not a stira when we say, Kol mashe Talmud vasik asad l'chadish nitna l'Moshe Sinai. Seemingly is the contradiction over here. On the one hand, you're saying asad l'chadish. You're saying it's something new. On the other hand, you're saying nitna l'Moshe Sinai because it was still concealed, that Moshe was not even aware of it, though it was given and it's inherent in the Torah that he was given. So therefore, Torah is about increase, and therefore we use the term Yosef, Haisafa. That's why Yosef has to do with the idea of Torah. Why is Yehuda the idea of action? The power of action, the person is the lowest levels. Chassidus often speaks about that there's 5 levels in the person. There's intellect, there's emotions, there is thought, speech, and deed. If you want to divide it further, there's on top of that, there's delight, and there's ratzon, there's will. But the point is that action is considered the lowest power of a person. Hein besuga medaber bechlal. Both in human beings in general, action is the lowest type of activity that a human being can be engaged in. How much more so when we deal with Yidden, how much lower it is, because their intellect and their emotions are so much more connected with the spiritual realms, etc., etc., and their thought and speech. So therefore, when it's a simple action is considered the lowest. Atem krim adam, that you are the ones that are called adam. This power, this aspect of action, especially for a Yid, is an idea of a descent from a high building to a low and deep pit. To go down so low, to engage in action, to leave my ivory tower and be involved in doing actions of mitzvahs, there has to be the idea of accepting, like moide has to be an accepting, and it has to be a sublimation, idea of forcing oneself to lower oneself to deal with the world of action. So that's why it has to do with the word Yehuda. Yehuda is from the word Haidah, the idea of admitting and accepting. That is why Yehuda is Mais. So now the Rebbe brings in something that we spoke about in short previously. Also, this whole topic of Yehuda and Yosef, concerning Torah study and action. There is a dispute about this in the Gemara. Chad Amar Talmud Gadol. One person says that Torah study is greater. V'chad Amar Ma'aseh Gadol. And one says that action is greater. V'agam shelo b'soif nimnu v'gamru the Talmud Gadol. Though eventually they took account, like any time when you need to decide and have a majority ruling, so they took account, and they came to the conclusion by the head count and by the vote, the Talmud Gadol, the Torah study is greater. Still in all, since we know that these and these are both the words of the living God, it comes out, there's room for both opinions. And both opinions are the words of the living God. So even the opinion that we did not rule in its favor, even the opinion is of action, has a certain significance to it. When it comes to practice of halakha, they took account and they came to the conclusion that learning Torah is great. So now, but that itself, why is learning Torah greater? So even at the conclusion, like we mentioned also last time, even at the conclusion when it says that learning is greater, it's not in a bubble. It's not removed from action. The greatness of learning is because it brings to action. Like Chazal say that the reason why Talmud is great is because it brings to action. Vahainu. What does this mean? The Iker Milos HaMaisahu Mishum She'inyan Maisa HaMitzvus HaVayis HaBerurim. What is the great quality, what's the great advantage of action over learning? What do I gain with action that I don't have with learning? It's because when I do the action of the mitzvahs, so then I elevate the sparks, which is really the whole entire purpose, to elevate the sparks and bring them back to their source. But to be able to do this avodah, to be able to refine and elevate the sparks, there has to be the empowerment from Torah. Torah empowers us and gives us the capability to elevate the sparks. And if we do not have the power of Torah, so despite whatever we do, we're not going to be able to elevate the sparks. Like we know that if a person ate something that's not kosher, even though he didn't know that was not kosher, and even though he ate l'shem shamayim, and he davened with the power and energy of it, and he learned, the sparks didn't go up. Why? Because L'Poyel, Torah says that this is prohibited. For a birur to take place, it can only take place if Torah empowers you to do it. And the Rebbe says this idea that birurim comes about through the empowerment of Torah is also reflected in the simple sense. So he says in the brackets, just like simply put, so that a person should be able to fulfill action. There has to be, for that sake, Torah study, so he should know the action that he has to do. So just like in the simple sense, a person can only know what to do if he has the Torah beforehand, because otherwise he doesn't know how to put on film, what to do with his film, how to make film, etc., etc. The same thing spiritually as well, that the action of the mitzvah should be able to affect avodas haberurim. That's only by the power of Torah that enables that to take place. Yesh b'Torah gam milos avodas haberurim. So the Rebbe says an amazing thing. Even though Torah on its own is not the one that does the berurim, it's only the ma'isa of mitzvahs. But since the Torah empowers us to be able to do the avodah of berurim, so also the Torah has in it the advantage of berurim as well. This is what it means that Talmud is great, that brings to action, because it empowers the action of avodas haberurim. So that means the fact that it empowers the avodas haberurim, it must have it a certain degree in itself. And so too it's spiritually, that just like physically Torah study enables a person to know what to do, the same thing spiritually, that the Torah brings about and empowers the avodas haberurim. This advantage that Maisa had, that Torah also has, because it gives the empowerment for it, is only now. Because only now, before Mashiach comes, is the idea of refining the sparks. After Mashiach comes, there's not going to be any refining of sparks. Mashiach lost love, as opposed to when Mashiach comes, then the refining of sparks will be closed. They'll be finished, will be done. Like it says, the spirit of Tumah I will remove from the land. In other words, the clippus won't be there. There won't be any clippus. You don't have to remove the sparks from the clippus. The sparks are going to be released already. The idea of action then will not be concerned with doing the avoid of refining the sparks. And therefore the action will not need the Torah study. We said before that Torah study empowers the action to be able to elevate the sparks. But if the action is not there to elevate the sparks, you don't need the Torah to empower the action that way. And therefore, the Torah study is not what brings to action. That's why when Mashiach comes, action will be greater, like we said before. This difference that Talmud Gadol is only nowadays. Or actually he didn't mention it yet, but when Mashiach comes, the halacha is going to be changed and action is going to be greater. So now the Rebbe is going to say, what do you mean? Halacha is halacha. How can it change? So the Rebbe is going to explain, halacha can change. The Rebbe says a similar idea concerning what it says that it's brought down, that even though now we paskin like Beis Hillel, that when Mashiach comes, the Bezdin, the Sanhedrin, is going to come along and take a new vote on the matter, and then the halacha is going to be like Beis Shammai. We're not going to uproot the rules of halacha. The rules of halacha are still going to be there, but by the very rules of halacha, we're going to have a Bezdin of equal stature to the Bezdin of old, and therefore they're going to be able to rule that now the halacha is like Beis Shammai, not like previously where we ruled that the halacha is like Beis Hillel. So the Rebbe in a microcosm says the same thing over here. Even though in the times, the way it's brought down Sechtes Kiddush, they took account and they decided that Talmud Gadol, but when Mashiach comes, they will reevaluate, revisit this, and come to the conclusion that action is greater. Let's see it inside. The manner in which the change of the ruling of Allah will be when Mashiach comes, it's through the fact that when Mashiach comes, they will again take account and come to a new conclusion. And then the ruling will be, instead of the way the ruling was in the times of the Gemara, that Torah learning is greater, they will count again, they will vote again, and they will come to the conclusion, Shemaisa Gadol. And the Rebbe says, this is not just something I'm making up. This is a halacha that one can change halacha based on such factors. It's the halachic ruling. There is a possibility for changing the rules of halacha from one Sanhedrin to a different Sanhedrin, through taking account and coming to a different conclusion. Provided, this is a very crucial point that Rebbe doesn't bring us down here, provided that the Sanhedrin that's taking the new vote is of equal stature. That's why we cannot do this, because we are not considered a Sanhedrin or being to put together a Bezdin of an equal stature of Sanhedrins that were in the times of the Gemara. But when Mashiach comes, especially with Chias HaMesim, we'll definitely have people of that stature that could overturn that Psak Din and come with a new ruling. The Rebbe says this is not just different generations, but he says even in the same generation we find that there was a change. In addition to this, also in that very generation, we find one time they had taken account and they came to the conclusion in one way. And then again they took another count and they came to the conclusion differently. There's an example of this, that there used to be a Gzeira, for example. It's not the exact same situation, but still, just like we know there's wine of a goy, there's bread of a goy, there's cooking things of a goy got cooked, Bishalakum, there used to be a prohibition of shemenakum, of non-Jewish oil, and this was overturned. So again, we see, even though there was a certain ruling that there was by a certain time, it could be overturned based on dealing with certain criteria that has to be done. Now, there was a little bit different, the criteria, but the point is, by certain criteria, things can be changed. So the Rebbe says, second line from the end of this paragraph, how much more so in the Sanhedrin of the future times, of Mashiach's times, comparison to the Sanhedrin prior to Mashiach's times, there will be possibility to be a change in the ruling, and we will change from being the ruling that learning Torah is greater, it will change to the fact that action is greater. Last paragraph on this page, from this is only understood the reason. It only explains why in the future Torah study will not be greater. It doesn't explain why action will be greater. All it says is that Torah study will not have the Maila of Avodas HaBirurim, and therefore it won't have, because Los Lavi there won't be Avodas HaBirurim, so therefore Torah study is not necessary to empower Birurim. So that's it. But nothing more than that is explained. The reason why then action will be great is tisgala milas inyan akfir shebamaisa dahainu inyan habitul v'anivus. What will be the advantage of Mashiach's times in action? Because then we will appreciate the great quality of the bittul, the sublimation that we said that action is about. Putting myself aside, my mind, my emotions, and everything to do just a simple action. That's a level of bittul, it's a level of humility. And now we're going to explain V'zel V'avdi David Melech Aleim. That's why when Mashiach comes, Yehuda will be higher than Yosef. Nowadays, when Talmud is Gadol, Yosef is greater, and Yosef is the king over all of his brothers. When Mashiach comes, my servant David will be greater. Shagam Shaz Yugam Kol Gilui Kol Talmud Gadol. Though then there will be all the revelations, including the greatness of Torah study. The main novelty will be in the idea of action, the idea of sublimation. We had this also in a previous mimer. Therefore, the emphasis is my servant David. The the idea of servitude, that's the idea of sublimating. We asked initially in the mimer, why are we calling Mashiach by the name David? The essential quality of David HaMelech is his humility. We can move about Maimer like it's explained over there in the Maimer of the Frierdiker Rebbe. Though he was a king of all the Yidden. He called himself poor and a pauper, like it says in Tillim, I am a poor person, I am a pauper. He was in the ultimate state of nullification and sublimation to Hashem. Therefore, he's called a pious one. This piety has to do with his bittul. And that's also the advantage of Mashiach, that he will be humble. And therefore, we call Mashiach by David's name, because he will embody the humility of David. And the humility of David is the entire avodah of Mashiach's times, the avodah and the mile of action, which shows on humility more than the mile of Torah study. That's the idea that my servant David will be a king over them. When Mashiach comes, will become revealed the advantage of action. There will be the building of third Beis Hamikdash, that's already standing, built, and ready above. It will descend and become revealed in the future. The Mashiach's times is the ultimate perfection of the creation of this world and the creation of the entire Seder Ishtalshlos, including all the 50,000 jubilees of levels and levels upon levels that we will go on in Mashiach's times. The same as Man HaGolus. This is all dependent on our actions and service during the time of Golus. Oid be Yaseinu Mitzrayim while we're still in Egypt. Vashleimus the loss of Laviti Gdoile Yoiser Mashleimus Yom Hashlishi Shehuchel by Kitoiv. The perfection of Mashiach's times will be even greater than the perfection of Tuesday. That's a day that is double the word Kitoiv, Kimeduber Beisvaz Hachroinu, like was spoken about in a previous Sikha that the Rebbe spoke about. Mashakosov Kilagoy Godla Simcha Shamdaik. It says, I will make you a great nation there. The greatness of the Eden is revealed specifically in Golus. Shashleim is the Yisrael Nasas Dafkai the Avodah Begolus. The perfection of the Eden occurs specifically through the Avodah in Golus. And afterwards we come to the building, the third base of Migdash, with our youth and our elderly, our sons and our daughters, a great congregation will return here, speedily in our